they do home renovation for high-end homes, right? So any project above 100K is their preferred. They don't like to do anything under that. So I guess the specific question for them, and this ties into the avatar, the MDP, right? The crafting a compelling offer, right? So for them going into the market, and because they've been in business for 30 years, right? But no CRM, everything on Excel sheets, everything on pen and paper, which is great, like it's awesome that you've been able to do that. But now, it's his son who's working on scaling everything. So I guess a question for them would be along the lines of, as they're now starting to mark, and everything's been referrals. So that's okay. So that's one point before we even get into that. So what I'm finding as well is a lot of these guys, and I tend to work with the ones that are between 100K to a million a year. And then sometimes I do some that are, under 10 million. So why do you think so many home service businesses, construction businesses, why do you think so many are stuck on like, hey, we get a lot of business from referrals. We don't need that. We don't need paid advertising. We don't need X, Y, and Z. Like we just get so many referrals. Why do you think so many of them are stuck on that?
Resistance to change, limiting belief. And
Mm,
when they start telling me stuff like that, I'm like, okay, well, do you know what Pabst Blue Ribbon beer is?
mm,
Well, I heard of it. Okay, so why aren't they the leader? Whoa. Well, back in the early 80s, the beer companies that were smart, the two that come to mind the quickest, what did they do? Instead of just regular beer, they moved into the light beer,
mm.
right? But the old school ones, Pabst, some of the others, they went by the wayside because they didn't pivot. So at some point, sure, you might think that referrals is everything, but times are changing. That trust isn't there anymore. Sales guy used to be about the sales guy would sell himself and hope to have a good product and company behind him. That doesn't carry as much weight as it used to, because who are you and where's your Google review? Where's your Trustpilot review? You're a sales guy selling a company. So referrals are still good, but if that is your sole reliance, I think you become stagnant. I don't know that you're capitalizing on the growth potential. And at some point, you're just going to have an expensive hobby where you're just kind of taking a cruise in the pontoon boat on the lake on a Sunday afternoon versus, strapping on some skis, getting behind the speedboat, for lack of a better analogy.
Right.
Um, so I guess it depends on their business goal. Some of these guys that are young and ambitious and trying to conquer the world, they need to understand they need to have multiple irons in the fire, achieving multiple things that all converge at the same spot. If somebody is 100% reliant on referrals, they won't grow and they'll become stagnant. And then ultimately they're likely, I don't have any data to back this up, it's just kind of a thought. At some point they're going to get tired of being stagnant. They're doing okay. The grandkids are good, they're good, house paid for, whatever. It's something for them to do, but it gets boring because it's stagnant. So then they decide they want to sell. But they're not going to be able to sell for as much because they've been stagnant and they,
Right.
they can't show the silver lining to the private equity or the bigger company that'll absorb them or whatever. So they end up taking less just to get out. Um, but if you're moving and shaking and you're showing some good upward, okay, PE might want to gobble you up. But if you don't, if you're just kind of sitting there on the lazy river tour, okay, you got a hobby, something that keeps your mind busy, you make some money, you're good and don't care. And if you're happy with that and that's where you're at and that's what you want, you're never going to change that. But if you got somebody who's got some ambition and they're like referral only and they're stuck and they don't get it, it's a limiting belief that they don't believe that what guys like me and you are telling them, and or um, they're just so stuck in their ways, they just can't get out of their own way, if that makes sense.
It does. And especially nowadays, as everybody's talking about AI, this, AI, that, right? So when, especially as a business owner who's unwilling to adapt in anything, you're gonna get left behind, right? We've all seen like, oh, this brand is making a lot of noise, but then they make a mistake, or they choose not to adapt, or they choose not to evolve, and now nobody hears about. We've seen it with Netflix and Blockbuster, right? Netflix went to Blockbuster. Blockbuster was like, nah, we don't need it. Netflix takes off. Nobody talks about Blockbuster anymore, you know?
Nope.
So, so when it comes to AI, I know you mentioned that anything task-based can be automated. Like a lot of what we do is we help automate like just the conversations. Because I was speaking to a lawn care company the other week, and they get 60, 70 leads a month, right? They're not huge. They're spending about 3K a month on ads. But he's like, dude, we're only able to take about 30% of the calls, right? Like they get a lot, but they're only because he's like, we're busy all the time. We don't have time to get back to every lead. And I'm just like, so you're just leaving money on the table, right? And it's the same thing with like, think about how many missed calls you have per month, right? So a lot of what we do is we put AI in place that's automatically having those conversations with people, automatically qualifying them and booking them in for you so that you and your team can focus on what matters.